Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast review video. Today we dive deep into Chaos Knights. Yeah, Killy.
The Dark Kid.
Hello folks, welcome to another SkaredCast review video. Today we're looking at, that's right, Chaos Knights. Now this isn't going to be like a, you can kind of see here, it's going to be a stealth video as well, I guess. My green screen likes saying yellow is green. But we're doing this guy here. Really cool tome. If you are a Chaos Knights, Renegade Knights player, you will be very pleased with this book. And I was able to read over it. Thank you, Games Workshop, for sending it over for me to review it. And today, I'm not exactly going to go over a specific, you're not really going to see, snapshots of rules or whatever. I'm going to talk about the couple of things that stood out to me as a Warhammer player in terms of the book itself. Sit back, relax, and let's see what Chaos Knights has to offer. First, let's look at the thickness of the book. It's about 72 pages, so not the biggest book that we've had in terms of a codex so far. However, that doesn't mean it's not chock-a-block full of really cool lore, really cool new artwork. That's just teeming with amazingness. You know, you've got all the cool heraldry, different houses, and how they have their own heraldry and stuff. You know, they really cool conversion ideas and pictures and things like that. So, you know, they look amazing. And each house, you know, they're going into detail with lots of different chaos houses, something they haven't really done before. Like Imperial and Quaestor Mechanicus houses have a rich history, and here we get to dive in to the history of a lot of different of the renegade households, the chaos households, and where they come out of in the universe themselves, in the Cicatrix Maledictum. We've got their timeline. You've got some repeat artwork as well of stuff that we've seen before. However, this is sort of like a visual part of the book itself with the new knight kits they've been released, but also a plethora of conversions for taking the regular Imperial Knight sets and making them renegade-y, putting spikes on them and changing their heads and, really kind of showing off their defiled sort of versions of themselves. Then we jump into the rules themselves. The rules themselves are as such. You can either, you have a Quaestor Traitoris keyword, and you can either be a infernal household or an iconoclast household. And each of these has specific rules, sort of like the Imperial households and the Quaestor Mechanicus households. It'll give you access to different relics, different stratagems, different rules. It also allows you to make any Chaos Knights in your detachment a Dreadblade. And one Dreadblade per detachment gets some cool sort of special abilities and or detriments that will help and or not help them in battle, which is kind of cool. Something you'll notice is there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of knights, Lords of Wars. And you have the War Dogs, which are your armigers, essentially. That is one entry, and you can make them shooty or close combat-y. So you can give them the autocannons. These are very similar to your Imperial Knights. So, AK, look at your Helverins and your Warglaves in order to really kind of see what they do as well. Then we have the Knight Despoiler. The Knight Despoiler is based off of your traditional Imperial Knight chassis. However, the weapon options are a lot more varied, and you can essentially build any style of knight from this. A paladin, a crusader, a double gatler guy, a gallant, etc., etc. The biggest thing here is if you do build it like a gallant, it has an engine of destruction rule, you will get +1 weapon skill, +1 attack, which means if you take a regular knight armed like a gallant, you get the same amount of attacks, you get the same weapon skill as a normal gallant, which is pretty cool. Then you have a Knight Tyrant, basically your Valiant and or Castellan built together into one big thing. Pretty much the exact same. Essentially, you can kind of change it to a Valiant or a Castellan. It's just one entry instead, and it's called the Knight Tyrant. Then you have 2 entries that are built with the new Chaos bits for the new kit. The Knight Desecrator, which is essentially like a Preceptor. So this guy gives rerolls to hit to all war dogs within 6 inches, reroll 1s to hit. And he has a really cool weapon called the Laser Destructor. It's a heavy D3, 60-inch range, strength 14, -4 AP, D6 damage weapon. If it rolls a 6 to wound, it does D3 automatic wounds, D3 mortal wounds on top of that as well. So that's pretty cool. It's essentially a better Preceptor, in my opinion. And the Knight Rampager, which is like a Gallant, except it's a little bit more expensive in terms of points. However, if it's using its Thunderstrike Gauntlet or its Reaper Chainsword, you get an extra hit on an unmodified roll of a 6 to hit. So it has like exploding 6s with its Chainsword or its Gauntlet, making it relatively good in duels against other big creatures or knights. The weapons themselves, pretty much the exact same as you would consider from the Imperial Knight Codex. No big changes here, except for the addition of that Laser Destructor, which is on the Knight Desecrator. Now we jump into the Might of the Fallen Houses. This is just explains the rules for the different households that you sort of swear your allegiance to. The first is the Traitorous Lances. Essentially, if you have 3 big knights in a super heavy detachment, you get +6 command points instead of +3. And if you have 0 Titanic units, you get 0 command points. So if you just have a super heavy detachment with 3 Warglaves, or 3 war dogs, you get 0 command points. If you have 1 knight, 1 big knight, and a couple of small knights, you get 3 command points. If you have at least 3 big knights in the detachment, you get 6 command points. It also means that you become either an Iconoclast or an Infernal, and each of these has a cool rule. The Iconoclast household ambition is like your house trait, sort of like Tyrannus or things like that, but this is for all of the households that have the Iconoclast. When they charge, performed a heroic intervention, or were charged, you add +1 attack, which can be really good for like gallants and things like that. Your AP on your weapons is an extra AP, and when an enemy fails a morale test within 12, an additional model flees. Kind of cool. That's in addition to the rules. So they're scary, and when they charge in or are charged, that first round of combat, they're better in combat, which is really cool, especially when you're doing like Thunderstomps and stuff. That's like an extra 3 attacks for your Thunderstomps. The Infernal household is probably my favorite. I really like how this works. Think of a Tau Riptide that gets to take a mortal wound and sort of have, like, basically make their gun better, or make their invulnerable save better, or move better. This Infernal household allows you to take your knight and sort of adapt it to what you need to happen. You can, at the start of the movement phase, each model with the ambition can Demonic Surge. So they take a mortal wound and they roll a D3. And this can either be an additional move and making it faster when it advances and charges, giving it +1 to both rolls. It can either get +1 toughness, or it selects one ranged weapon and it adds +1 to the weapon's strength and damage, which can be really powerful when combined with something like a Gatling cannon or the plasma cannon on the Tyrant or Castellan, or even the Flamer from the Tyrant that's like a Valiant. However, if you want to pick one of these options, you take D3 mortal wounds instead. So you could take 1 mortal wound and roll, or you could take D3 mortal wounds and maybe just take 1 anyway, and pick the choice that you want, which means you could pick a gun every turn to be +1 damage and +1 strength. That's a Gatling cannon with strength 7, 3 damage. Think about that for a second. Now we're jumping into the stratagems. Some of them very similar to the Imperial Knights. Some of them very unique to Chaos Knights. And here is where you start getting a lot of the flavor. Combos start building. And it's one of the things that will take the Chaos Knight Codex and really bring it. I believe it'll be a very relevant codex coming into the tournament scene or even in your local hobby shop. Make sure you pack those Meltaguns. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 total stratagems. Iron Aegis, which is cool. It's basically for the Tyrant, like the Big Knight. It can stay still, and for 2 command points, every unit within 6 inches gets an invulnerable save, which is pretty cool. So it's basically like a giant, big force field that walks around. It's kind of neat. But it works on any friendly Chaos units whilst they're within wholly within 6. So you could do it to like tanks and things like that. As long as they're wholly within, they get an invul save. Kind of snazzy. You can... The Auto Explode one is in there, or the Explode on a 4+ is in there. Thunder Stomp is in there. You know it's pretty much the same. Sky Reaper Protocols is for any War Dogs. They get to reroll hits with their guns in the shooting phase against stuff that flies, which is cool. Rotate Iron Shields, pretty standard. It already has the maximum of 4+ built into this. You can make extra relics or extra Warlord Traits, the exact same as in the regular Imperial Knight Codex. Pack Dogs, kind of fun if you're running some like War Dogs that want to get into combat. If one War Dog makes it into combat, all War Dogs get to reroll charges if they're within 12 inches of that one. So it's like a, rerollable charges. Not terrible. Chain Sweep, I think that one's in the Imperial Codex as well. Death Grip, you know how that one works. Demonic Guidance System, it's basically your, you can shoot a shield breaker missile at a character and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Although you can also do it in Overwatch, which is interesting. Full Tilt, advance and charge. Devastating Reach, that's pretty standard. Titanic Duel, this is an interesting one. It's 1 command point, and you basically pick a random number, and your opponent picks a random number from 1 to 3, and if they're the same number, nothing happens. If they're different numbers, your knight gets an extra... You add the number you picked to your unit's attacks, and as long as you attack a Titanic unit, you'd be like, I'm going to pick 3, and then your opponent says 2, and then you pick 3 attacks extra. It's very interesting, situational. Trail of Destruction can reroll hits when you Overwatch, or shoot or fight, just basically reroll hit rolls. That one's a standard one from the Index, essentially. Break the enemy line. So then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 stratagems that are specific to the Iconoclast household trait. Remember, that's the one that if you charge, you get, or are charged, you get +1 attack, etc., etc. Break the enemy line. You can pick an enemy unit that you made a charge move that within 1 inch of a unit of yours that made a charge move, and then all melee weapons get reroll hits against that unit. So you basically pick an enemy unit in close combat, and your guys all get to +1 hit again. I mean, reroll hits against it for 2 command points. Not bad. Vow of Carnage is probably one of my favorites. 1 command point, and you pick a model, an Iconoclast model from your army before the battle starts for 1 command point. For every 10 models it kills, it gets +1 attack, which means you can have like a Gallant or like a Rampager run in and thunder stomp a bunch of orcs, and then for every 10 orcs it kills, it gets +1 attack, which technically is +3 stomp attacks. What? So you could have like a knight going in there with like 20 attacks or 25 attacks. Terrifying. So it's called the Vow of Carnage. That's 1 angry knight. Remember, when they charge in, they also get +1 attack too, so just get excited about that. Vow of Dominance. Vow of Dominance, another Iconoclast thing. It's before the battle starts. Pick a unit that until the end of the battle, you cannot wound it on better than a 4+. So you pick a model in your army, and you cannot wound it on a better roll than a 4+. Even if you have +1 to wound or anything like that, you can't. Anything that's a 1, 2, or 3 just fails. can be situational, but can be useful, I guess. And then the Beast Slayer. 1 CP before the battle starts, you pick a model, and when you're attacking an enemy unit that has more than 8 wounds, or 8 or more wounds, you reroll wounds of 1. And that's it. So basically against like vehicles and stuff like that, you rerolls 1s to wound against stuff that has 8 or more wounds. Kind of cool. Then you have 1, 2, 3 Infernal Household. These are the ones that basically are Infernal packs, and they can pick the cool thing per game, per turn, sorry. 2 command points, start of the fight phase. Pick a household unit until the end of that phase. When an enemy model is destroyed by an attack, you on a 4+, you regain 1 lost wound, and you can regain up to 6 wounds in this manner. So if you run in like a gallant that's wounded into a bunch of infantry and just murder a bunch of infantry, you can regain up to 6 wounds for 2 command points. Not bad. It's like a healing thing. 3 command points, Pact with the Dark Gods. When an Infernal Household model from your army is destroyed on a 4+, return the model to play with D3 wounds. So they get the Zombie Knight stratagem, essentially. Pretty cool, considering Zombie Knights are awesome. And then you have the Demonic Ammunition. You pick an entire detachment of Chaos Knights, and all the Infernal Household Chaos Knights heavy stubbers become Strength 5, which is cool. That's 1 command point. You can make all your heavy stubbers or Strength 5. Pretty neat. And then you have another Infernal Household. Oh, never mind. That's 4 Infernal Households. It's 2 command points for a Diabolic Rift. Now, this one is powerful. Diabolic Rift. Use this stratagem at the start of your opponent's psychic phase. Until the end of that phase, when a psychic test is taken for an enemy model within 12 inches of any Chaos Knights of Infernal Household, that enemy model suffers the perils of the warp on any dice roll instead of a double 1 or double 6. So, the start of the enemy psychic phase, if any enemy psychers within 12 inches of your infernal houses just roll a psychic test, they perils. Awesome. Then we have the Dreadblades, which have pacts and damnations. So 1 Dreadblade in each detachment. Remember, you can kind of pick Dreadblades if you want, but 1 Dreadblade in each detachment will have pacts and damnations. So you can either roll 2d6 to randomly generate 2 pacts, and this is a bonus that they get, or you can pick one. So you can either roll twice on the chart or pick one. And they go from reroll hits against characters like Titanics, roll on a 4+ after you charge, the enemy unit takes D3 mortal wounds, move it faster, add 2 inches to the movement characteristic, add 1 to the leadership characteristic, and gain a command point, for example. Arc Fiend, make a 6-inch heroic intervention as if it was a character, etc., etc. However, after determining the packs, you must either select 2 different damnations or randomly roll for 1. And some of them are really nasty. However, if any of your Dreadblades have the damnations, roll 2d6 for each of them, subtracting 1 if they have the Forsaken damnation. If the result is less than the leadership, the damnation does not apply for the turn. AKA, if you fail a leadership test on 2 dice, your damnation kicks in for that turn. And some of them are nasty. Like Forsaken. While this damnation applies, this model cannot be affected by any stratagems whatsoever, and even rerolls. Warp Rage, while this damnation applies, cannot fall back, and has a 6+ ballistic skill. Volatile Reactor. If it takes any wounds but doesn't die, on a 4+, it loses an additional wound. Always fights last in the fight phase. Or Single-Minded Hatred, has to shoot and charge the closest unit. Defiant Machine Spirit. You have to, when you advance or charge, you subtract 1 from the result. And when you roll a hit in close combat, subtract 1 from the result as well. So, these are pretty cool. They're not as bad because you with a leadership test, you can stop them from happening. So it's not terrible. However, you get some cool bonuses, and I like the fact that you either get to roll randomly on one and don't get any choice, or choose two and get two of the less worst choices, as it's the opposite for the bonuses. Either pick one bonus or roll. Then we jump into the relics, which I feel are where a lot of the source of the book comes from. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 relics. So pretty cool. And a lot of them are sort of like what you would expect for marking knights. That's kind of how you represent the marks on knights, is with the specific relics, which is pretty neat. So you have one of your knights in each detachment becomes a character automatically. So you can give them a Warlord trait and things like that. However, a relic. You can also buy extra relics, etc., etc. You have an Infernal Household relic. So that's the regular household, essentially. The model with this relic counts as double normal wounds. You know, kind of like the household that the Imperials have, but it's a relic, so you can put it on a knight. Veil of Mendragard has a 4+ invulnerable save against ranged weapons, so basically a 4+ invul. Pretty cool. That's an Iconoclast household as well. Coronate Target. This is one of my favorites. Once per battle at the start of the fight phase, a model with this relic can activate it. The enemy and themselves cannot take invulnerable saves for that fight phase. So you can deny your enemies invulnerable saves for combat. Like with a Gallant or a Knight Rampager or something that runs in and murders stuff in close combat, can be super powerful. Tzeentchian Pyro Throne. Basically give a relic to a knight. It becomes a Psyker, can deny a psychic power. And if it has the Warlord trait of deny a psychic power, which we'll get to in a second, can deny 2 psychic powers. It also knows Smite. So it knows Smite. It doesn't become Tzeentch or anything. However, it just knows Smite. It's a Psyker. And the cool thing is, when it dies, it automatically counts as rolling a 6 for exploding. So you can make a suicide Psyker Knight. That if you kill it, it's auto-exploding. Awesome. Helm of Warp Sight. You can give it to anything that isn't a Castellan, essentially. When resolving an attack made by ranged weapons, ignore hit roll modifiers. This is probably one of the most powerful ones on like a double Gatling knight, which means your Elatok flyers are dead. The Daimonas Laser Destructor becomes strength 16, which is pretty cool. And it's heavy 3 instead of heavy D3, so you can basically have a cool laser destroyer that is just straight 3 shots, strength 16 instead of D3 shots. That's not bad. The Tyrant's Banner, you can give it to a Rampager, Desecrator, or Despoiler, so not one of the big tyrants. Any Chaos units within 6 get +1 leadership, and you gain a command point at the start of your turn on a 5+. Just by him being on the table on a 5+, gain a command point. That's pretty cool, actually. So you can actually have command points all the way through the game. That's not bad. The Teeth That Hunger. It's a chainsword that is +8 strength and straight 6 damage. And if you don't kill anyone, you can take a wound, because it's hungry. The Rune of Nattergra. It's a Dreadblade only. 5+ invulnerable save against range and melee. And it gets 1 additional Dreadblade plaque and 1 additional damnation of your choice. So gets a cool invul save, but it's got more damnations. Interesting. Putrid Carapace of Nurgle. If you make a successful saving throw on a 4+, you take a mortal wound in the fight phase. So kind of like a Suppurating Plate, but for your knights. That's cool. On a 4+. I don't like Suppurating Plates. Bound Varedian Psychogeist. If you shoot, basically you can improve your AP by 1 on a 6 to wound. Okay, cool. The Traitor's Mark. -1 leadership if you're within 12 of it. So remember, with the extra thing of people running away from the Iconoclast household, can be kind of handy. If you're within 6 inches, -2 leadership. So it's just like a leadership bomb relic. Quicksilver Throne of Slanesh. When an advance or charge roll is made from this relic, add 1 to the result. A model with this relic always fights first in the fight phase, and which is cool. So always fight first, and +1 to advance and charge. And this is one of the coolest like combos that I've been looking at. So you get the Quicksilver Throne of Slaanesh, +1 to advance and charge, right? And you put it on an Infernal Household, which, remember, can Demonic Surge to get +2 move, +1 advance, and +1 charge. So that's a 14-inch move, +2 to charge, +2 to advance if you give it the Quicksilver Throne, which is pretty cool. And if you make it a Dreadblade, then you can if you roll a 1 to, if you make it a Dreadblade and you give it the Demonic Vigor, on a there's a 1 in a 50-50 chance you add another 2 inches to its movement characteristic, or not, it becomes better weapon skill, or its ballistic skill improves. That would be silly on a 6. But it's more likely to get a close combat ability. And then you combine that with the Eager for the Kill Warlord trait, which is when an advance or charge roll is made, add +1 to the result, and add 1 to the attack characteristics while it's in your enemy's deployment zone. So, with that, you're getting +2 inches to move, maybe +4 inches to move, and then you have +3 to advance and charge. Which then with full tilt means you could be moving 14 inches or 16 inches plus D6 +3, so minimum of 4, maximum of 9, and then charging with a +3 to your charge, which makes that one knight really fast. And on top of that, you're always fighting first in close combat. That's a cool little combo. That's a Skari-approved combo. Speedy. We have the Gauntlet of Ascension. That's the last relic. Thunderstrike Gauntlet basically becomes, you can reroll hit and reroll wound rolls, and that's it. And when a character model is destroyed, you add +1 strength, +1 attack to your characteristics. So if your enemy has lots of characters, you can make a knight that goes around just squishing him. And that's it. Pretty cool. So my favorite, of course, is the Helm of Warpsight, which is to ignore hit modifiers. I really like the Quicksilver Throne, which makes it really fast. The Tyrant's Banner to gain command points is not terrible. And, of course, the Putrid Carapace and Urgle. Like, they're all pretty cool. They've got some, like, decent ones based on your enemy. So you can really sort of pick and choose ones that help you in different situations. And then we go into the Warlord traits. There are 6 of them. If a Chaos Knights character is your Warlord, you cannot have a Warlord trait from the Warhammer 40,000 rulebook. That's right. You can use a table here to determine what they have. You can either roll or select. Infernal Quest basically gives your Warlord objectives secured, which is pretty cool. And if 2 units have the same characteristic or same thing, you count as 10 models. So if you're, like, basically count as troops, it's pretty cool for your Warlord. Not bad, so you can sit on an objective and take it away from people. Harbinger of Scrap Code. At the end of your movement phase, roll a d6 for each enemy vehicle within 6 inches on a 4+. They suffer 1 mortal wound. Situational. Can be cool if you're playing like a million vehicles. Knight Diabolus. Add +1 to your attacks. That's a pretty straightforward one. Warp Tainted Hull. You can deny 1 psychic power, as if you're a psyker. In addition, when you lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound in the psychic phase, on a 5+, the wound is not lost. So it gives you 5+ Venal Pain is against smites and things like that, and gives you a deny. Pretty cool, especially if you're going up against like a psychic spam, smite spam sort of list. Eager for the Kill. So advance and charge rolls, add +1. And add +1 attack if they're wholly within your opponent's deployment zone, because they want to go murder stuff. And then the last but not least, Aura of Terror. When a charge roll is made for an enemy unit within 12 inches of this Warlord, subtract 1 from the result. In addition, when a morale test is taken within 12, your opponent rolls 2d6, discarding the lowest, or either result if they're the same. So discard the lowest result within 12 on morale, so you can kind of make some leadership bombs with this list. Interesting. Still haven't found a interesting way to make leadership bombs. Last but not least, some cool tactical objectives that you can add to any of your Maelstrom of War missions. Well, folks, that is our quick down and dirty review of the Chaos Knights Codex. Let us know what you think down below, what cool combos you heard that you think you'd like to try. I am Skari, your grateful host, and a huge shout out to all the Patreons of the channel. Thanks to you, I get to continue cool content like this. Thanks a lot to Games Workshop for sending the Codex over, and I'm excited about some Chaos Knight stuff. Let me know if you'd like to see anything down below with this. Leave a comment, like, share, subscribe. Thanks a lot. See you till next time. Skari.